We're on.
Welcome, everybody, to Mount Holly Springs Poet and Open Mic. My name's Dustin Nispel. I coordinate the Mount Holly Given Poetry Open Mic every month. That used to take place at Amelia Given Library. Unfortunately, right now we are virtual and looking forward to getting back to in-person events. Uh, so Jim and Jen had reached out to me to feature um, the Miss Alice Mackenzie Swaim today, and I was really excited about it because I had moved into the Mount Holly area here probably about 3.5 years ago now, and it's really exciting to hear that she has over 8,000 published poems. So I'm really excited for this presentation. I know Jim and Jen have worked very hard on their research for Miss Swaim. After the feature of Alice, we are going to have an open mic. Um, and Jim will give me the heads up on that once we finish up with the features presentation and the readers for that. And then if anyone would like to share, you can unmute yourself and ask to share or raise your hand, and we'll proceed with that. So without further ado, and this is an event that is sponsored by Mount Holly Springs Heart and Soul in conjunction with Amelia Given Library. So big shout out to that organization. It seems like they're doing a lot of community building, which is amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jim, and we can get started with Miss Alice Mackenzie Swaim's poetry and history. Take it away, Jim.
Well, good evening, and thanks so much, Dustin, for really accommodating us immediately after we talked to you about doing this event. Um, we are part of an organization in Mount Holly that really is a community building organization with the purpose of really making all who live, work, learn, or play in Mount Holly feel welcome and have a sense of place. And we quickly realized that we have some remarkable women in Mount Holly that we wanted to feature, starting with obviously Amelia Given, of which the library is named after. And um, and so we wanted to make sure that we could feature her as well. But there are others, including Alice Mackenzie Swaim. And the purpose for tonight is to really combine history and the arts, because there's some history of Mount Holly Springs in this story as well. And we're featuring a poet that was well recognized, a world-renowned poet with over 8,000 published poems and over 800 awards. And so we're rolling out a new storytelling tool tonight. It's a story map, and we're going to use this story map to tell the story of Alice Mackenzie Swaim. And so because we may have folks joining by phone, I am going to read the text of what we have here tonight. So bear with me here. So buckle your seatbelts and let's go for a ride. These keys were found during a renovation project of the quote Swaim Mansion, the name Bill Swaim used to refer to the property when the Swaims owned the property at 18 South Baltimore Avenue in Mount Holly Springs. Pam Still, the current owner, refers to her property today as the Sylvanus Mayberry House, named after the person who built the house in 1794. Pam Still was renovating the property when she found these keys under the floorboards, and you can see these keys are from 1932. So someone is still looking for a set of keys that were lost a long time ago. I know how frustrating it is when I can't find my keys. And so the Swaims moved from Newville to Mount Holly Springs in August of 1940. They lived at 12 Hill Street, and here we have an article that we found documenting that move from the newspaper. This is 12 Hill Street. That the house still stands. This is a picture that I took of that place this summer. A story map obviously includes maps. So if you're joining us and you're not from Mount Holly Springs, this storytelling tool shows you where we're talking within the borough. So you can see where the 12 Hill Street location is. And that location really abuts the back of the property of the stone house where the Swaims moved. after living at 12 Hill Street. And here's a picture of that stone house, the Sylvanus Mayberry house. And that's where the Swaims lived from 1944 to 1951. And you can see on this where the map, it's very close to where they first moved. This is an interesting fact about this house. This house has lots of history, and the house was built in 1794, and it's in the location it's in because the builders wanted to take advantage of the cool air coming out of the Holly Gap, because obviously back in the 1700s there was no air conditioning besides nature. Here's a link to an interview that I did with Pam, the current owner. We're not going to play this link. This story map will be available on the Mount Holly Springs Heart and Soul Facebook page for folks to revisit, and you can enjoy the interview with Pam. It's very interesting, and she has done a remarkable job of renovating that property, both inside and also the grounds. Really making that property pretty close to what it was like when the Swaims lived there back in the 40s, early 50s. So let's get into some background for Alice Swaim. She was born in 1911. She was well-traveled and well-cultured. She traveled around Europe, was fascinated with European cities, cathedrals, and museums. Alice benefited from a cultural upbringing which served her well later as a poet. The family moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1928 when Alice was 17. Alice skipped high school and studied what once was the Pennsylvania College for Women from 1928 to 1930. And I was curious about that location, the Pennsylvania College for Women, and I did find a picture of Berry Hall, which was probably a building that Alice Mackenzie Swaim knew of. This college was located in the Shadyside neighborhood of Pittsburgh and is presently one of the branches of Chatham University. And Chatham University has lots of branch campuses, and so that's the genesis of the Pennsylvania College for Women now being part of Chatham University in Pittsburgh. She transferred to Wilson College in Chambersburg, receiving her BA degree in 1932. That's noteworthy for a college degree at that time for a woman. And I want to note that's quite an accomplishment. Her father taught at the Western Theological Seminary in Pittsburgh. And one of his students happened to be William Swaim. And the stars were aligned because they got married. And they were married in 1932 in Pittsburgh, and then moved to central Pennsylvania, where they spent the rest of their lives. Here's a picture of Alice and Bill's children, Elizabeth and Kathleen. We got that from A Poet for the Ages. So beautiful picture there, and some more background. So they were married in 32, moved to central Pennsylvania. Bill was a Presbyterian minister and was the executive secretary in the 1930s for Presbyterian Homes Incorporated, now known as Presbyterian Senior Living in Pennsylvania. In fact, Presbyterian Senior Living is in a lot of states. It's a regional presence in the East Coast. The Swaims had two daughters, Elizabeth Ann Swaim and Kathleen Mackenzie Swaim. They grew up in Newville, Mount Holly Springs, and Dillsburg, all small towns in south central Pennsylvania. Both children achieved significant academic and career success. Elizabeth was a rare books librarian and archivist at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. Kathleen was an English professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Alice started writing poetry when she was living in Mount Holly Springs. Alice Mackenzie Swaim was very successful as a poet, winning over 800 poetry awards and publishing more than 8,000 poems. 3 of her poems about Mount Holly Springs were published in an introduction to Mount Holly Springs, Pennsylvania, edited by A.D. Gramley and published in 1944. And I'd like to share some of those poems. And so this one is entitled Mount Holly Springs, where the South Mountains' wooded hills slope gently to the fertile plain. Beside a clear, cool mountain stream lies our small town, remote, serene. All seasons bring their beauty here. Each changing scene it would appear more lovely than last year. Spring's faint green and perfumed air conspire to cover all things bare with leafy bough, cool breezes mid the summer's heat. Delight us in each tree-lined street and cheer us now. Then autumn comes. We know of old, splashes the hills with rich and gold in one last fling before the chill mists shroud the scene and snow weighs down the evergreen and cold winds sting. If history's pages we could turn backwards 100 years or more, when Indians roamed the wooded hills and men kept guns beside the door, we'd see our town begin to grow, log by log, then roof by roof, until it gave the Indians proof the land was theirs no more. And when the first war for freedom raged and Washington asked for aid, our men made guns and bullets here and they were not afraid. And so this was one of the earliest poems for Alice Mackenzie Swaim. I grew up in Mount Holly Springs, and this poem speaks to me because I am a big fan of the four seasons of living in Pennsylvania and spent activities outside in all four seasons when I was growing up in the 70s. So when I read this poem and I visit Shrine Park and sit in the pavilion and look at that Holly Gap and read this poem, it really brings back a flood of memories of my experience in Mount Holly Springs as well. So here's a poem that spoke to Alice when she wrote it and speaks to me presently. Another poem by Alice Mackenzie Swaim, Mount Holly Springs. And when men's thoughts turned back to peace, homes were built and business came. They called our village Paper Town, for paper making brought it fame. Our hills looked down on war once more, armies of South and North, foreseeing the field of Gettysburg, rested here and then marched forth. Mount Holly Springs became its name and still does its part, a place of quiet beauty with a patriotic heart. Many dear ones now are absent, but we hope where'er they roam, their thoughts will often backward turn to the wooded hills of home. And here's another poem by Alice Mackenzie Swaim, Beautiful Mount Holly. Beautiful town of many springs, beautiful trees with welcome rings, beautiful streets that are paved, beautiful lawns by people made, beautiful waters so pure and clear, beautiful feet of running deer, beautiful foliage, fragrantly sweet, beautiful flowers bloom at our feet, beautiful springtime full of delight, beautiful summer with vegetation bright, beautiful autumn with ripened grain, beautiful winter with snowflakes again. Cheerful families in Mount Holly, cheerful, friendly, without folly, cheerful preachers and teachers too, cheerful patriots for red, white, and blue, cheerful sun that gives us light, cheerful moon that shines by night, cheerful planets in the sky so far, cheerful twinkling of each bright star. Beautiful eyes are those that show like window panes where heart fires glow, beautiful thoughts that burn and glare, for whole-souled honesty is printed there. And so Alice continued her poetry journey. The early poems were a first attempt at poetry for Alice, and she obviously got a lot better. She went on with writing poetry for close to 50 years. Here's an article that was in the newspaper that we found in 1967. Alice regularly contributed to the Carlisle Evening Sentinel as well as the Patriot News for a poetry column. And this article talks about that there was a recording made that featured 40 of Alice Swaim poems that professional actors made. We're still looking for this recording. We think we might know where it might be at the Historical Society of Dauphin County, perhaps. But this is an article that we found to demonstrate and showcase the poetry writing activities of Alice Swaim. And this is one of my favorite pictures that is in the Poet for the Ages of Alice in the field. And we do have some readers tonight from the Pennsylvania Poetry Society. who are also going to share some poems from Alice. And I think we'll start with Mark. Mark, this would be your time to shine.
Thank you. Our comrade has overcome technical difficulties and is in the gallery somewhere to say.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
If she would want to precede me, that's fine, but I can start.
Mark, why don't you just go ahead and then Joan Prescott can follow.
Very good. Now, if I wanted to reclaim my notes on screen, what shall I do here? If it can be done, I'll be cheerful.
Well, are you seeing the story map right now? Is that what you're seeing?
I see Alice in the field as anticipated.
So your notes probably should be minimized at the bottom of your screen. Do you see any files that are closed there?
I don't see them, but what about sharing the screen? That wouldn't make a difference, would it?
Well, how about I stop sharing the screen? Does that make any difference for you?
I see the words.
Then we have success.
Thank you. I'm Mark Barton, and I'm the vice president of the Pennsylvania Poetry Society. It was in a small commercial. It was born in 1949, and its charter entrusts us with the task to enhance exposure to appreciation for poetry throughout the state.
And then Dustin, make sure you share your screen so I can I can share screen as well. Give me permission to share.
All right, how do I do that?
Go down to share screen, and it should come up with an arrow.
Share. Okay, yep.
And then you can allow others to share screen.
Here, let me move this.
Am I supposed to let everyone share a screen?
Yes.
Multiple. Okay.
Yep.
All right, I enabled that for you.
Okay. Okay, Mark, I think we're ready to go.
All right. Well, one thing that becomes clear as we begin to spend time here together is that the two organizations appear to have a lot in common in terms of their sense of mission to the community, and particularly with the arts, and to place a profile on the arts, in your case, as they may relate to savants in Mount Holly who have helped in their own way to bring the arts forward, and also to assist aspiring artists through giving them a platform on which to recite, which to expose their own material. And it may be fortuitous that so many of us just mysteriously showed up from in different ways from the society, because perhaps there's an opportunity for the two organizations to liaise in ways that would be constructive to us both. But let me read a poem. That's the point of it. I'll read this one to you, and then I'll tell you why I picked it quickly for the evening's reading. And the poem is entitled "Shattering of Time." Under a watered-down October sun, my neighbor's small girl cried at sobbing intervals all afternoon. An angry wind had torn the last gold leaves from the old maple tree, and no one could ever put them back. The wrens had left their nests and disappeared beyond the hills where darkness could be. Time was shattering her world around small sandaled feet. Even with eyes squeezed shut, all her focused concentration could not stem the cresting tide of seasons or one who had known so few. Now, there's a reason I picked that one, which I think is beautiful. But like a lot of us, when we read a book through a book of poetry, we're always at least subliminally tuned into poems that might speak to personal experience. And as I began to look through Joan's volume for Write Poems, I was really quite surprised, after having just skimmed through a couple of pages, to come across this poem in which a child is sensing the march of time and its fearful consequences. Because my mother, through the years, remembered always her own trauma at the realization that time was going to leave her beloved childhood behind, and that there was nothing she could do about it. And so this poem has personal meaning to me through my mother, who knew Alice years ago. Here's another poem. Past the mill pond. The mill pond drowses deep in maple shade without a ripple to disturb its rest. The wooden wheel stands idle, half decayed. Two barefoot boys on an adventurous quest scuff through the drowsy grasses, rouse a flock of golden butterflies, then disappear beyond the slope and past the Indian rock, silent as dragonflies above the weir. The shimmer of the autumn afternoon seems centuries removed from the first bell that calls to school again. Now insects croon their summer sweet and immemorial spell. Lord, cherish children. Keep each childish dream with hope forever bright, as now they seem. And that sort of threads from the first. Again, we have children loving their childhood and being faced with a timeline. And here, the timeline, back to school again, appears to be Alice's image for more than just a summer ending, but childhood ending and dreams left behind as it ends. It's another poem of loss. And this time it's a pending loss that is in the mind of two young people. But here, she does take things a little farther to create an image of something larger that is lost. It would be possible to read just those two poems of Alice and believe that she is on the maudlin side of perspectives, that she falls somewhere on the continuum of darkness. And that's what is so important to the work of someone like Joan Prescott, who has brought an entire collection of poems together from a single author, so that you can, in reading them all, have a better sense of the whole person. Because there was darkness in some of what she wrote, and there was a plea to hope at the end of the second one, in which the two boys were going to be adventuring no more, but back in school, and then ultimately all grown up. You know what happens then? Just a dark poet. And the little girl and the young explorers would be so relieved had they the opportunity to hear one of Alice's poems of winter, which follows the loss of the leaves upon the tree and follows no more shenanigans in the hills behind the old mill. And this one is entitled Turning Toward Winter. After the golden interval of fall, there comes a time of turning toward rest, to valley roads and shelter farms and all the places that a weary heart loves best. We seek the lovely ritual of home, of candle lighting as dark closes in, wood smoke that spirals up the sky's dark dome, and kitchens noisy with the supper dim. There comes a time of turning toward sleep, after the lights are out and the fires turn low, and dark cloud skies their annual promise keep, their ancient, silent sacrament of snow. There's such a comfortable fluidity that however you read it comes through. It's almost as though, even if her message must be dark, Alice wants to convey a certain comfort to the reader, whatever the message. And so those three poems seemed a very appealing trilogy to me, and so I share them with you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'll tell you what, could you do me a favor and perhaps call Joan to have her call me, and then I can have her go through my phone to read and share her part. That to me seems like the easiest next alternative. Could you do that for me, Mark?
Do that right away. You want her to call you?
Yes, please. Okay, so what we want to do at this point is to, let me revisit the screen share. And so what we're going to try to do is have Joan call me, and then I'm going to put her through a speaker from my phone so that you can hear her through the computer. This is called MacGyvering it as we move forward. And while we're waiting, let's perhaps carry on with our story map. This is one of the quotes that really got me hooked into learning more about Alice Mackenzie Swaim. This is something that I shared at a faculty meeting at the elementary school when we were part of the Mount Holly Springs History Collaborative. It really speaks to me, and it says, "Courage is not the towering oak that sees storms come and go. It's the fragile blossom that opens in the snow." That really speaks powerfully to me because I'm a big promoter of fighting for the underdog, and that's what I think when I read that quote. So I wanted to share that. And
that's a pretty famous quote as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Jen Dieter shared one of her pictures to go along with that quote, so I wanted to share that as well. And so hopefully we can get Joan Prescott back on the line. We're trying this workaround, but this is a picture of the cover of the book that she put together. Alice Mackenzie Swaim, A Renaissance of Her Timeless Poems, selected and compiled by Joan Prescott. It still is available for purchase on Amazon and other online outlets. So we wanted to promote that. Here's a copy of Alice's obituary. And again, you can see the accomplishments she made while living as a poet. The interesting connection that I have with the Swaim family is not only the Mount Holly Springs connection, but also the Dillsburg connection. Alice's husband, Bill, was the pastor at Monaghan Presbyterian Church in Dillsburg, of which I'm a member. That was way before my time here. But the Swaim name in Dillsburg is rock star material because he made quite a splash. The Swaims made quite a splash in Dillsburg while they were here. And so that's an interesting connection that I have in both places. Here's a copy from Find a Grave of Alice's tombstone in the Big Spring Presbyterian Church Cemetery in Newville. Here's a map of how to get there. I decided I was going to ride my bike to that cemetery, not from Dillsburg. I thought I'll start at Boiling Springs to make sure I don't have too far to go. That still was quite a ride, but when I got to Newville, I wasn't sure exactly where to go. And what happened was I was coming in 641 here and got to here, and I turned left. Because I knew there was a Presbyterian church back that way. That was not the correct way. And if I had turned right, I would have gone right where I needed to be. So if you do happen to travel to Newville to that cemetery, look for the Newville Fire Company, because the fire company is right beside the cemetery. It's a beautiful church and property there, well worth visiting if you're up in Newville. Very historic cemetery. Here's a copy of Elizabeth's obituary, and I just want to highlight the connection to Mount Holly. Both Elizabeth and Kathleen attended Mount Holly School, and you can see that Elizabeth was a valedictorian from Carlisle High School in 1950, and what her background was. In fact, she was a classmate of William Gumby, and also Jenny Lee Tishy they were all classmates together. So I wanted to share that. And the really neat part of Joan Prescott's book is that she includes some anecdotes, firsthand anecdotes from Alice. And you take a look at our purpose of trying to bring stories from the past to have relevance in the present and the future. With the pandemic, people are looking for escapes, and there's stress at every turn. And many are looking for what we call mindfulness activities to really escape. And one of mine is, of course, is to cycle. And so Alice had some comments about that, not obviously during a pandemic, but I want to share what is written in the Poet for the Ages. Poetry has been an opening of many doors, not only heightened awareness of life and literature, but of friendship, international understanding, and knowledge of the world of publishing and printing with its rewards and pitfalls. But best of all, it's an ongoing enrichment of life, not limited by retirement. And Joan is on the line, so I'm going to answer this phone. Hi, Joan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we are going to do a backdoor way of connecting you. And so let me get this hooked up here. Hold on.
Okay, now am I doing all this on my phone?
Yes, you are.
Okay, percent. I just plugged it in.
Okay.
Didn't realize that. I thought I was doing. Yeah.
Okay, so can everybody hear?
Yes, she's coming through.
I can hear you.
Yep, I can hear.
All right, let me stop the share here. And can everybody on the computer hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, how about a thumbs up if you can hear us? Okay, we are good, Joan. You are live on on a Heart and Soul event, so you can start.
Okay. All right, everybody. Hi, I'm Joan Prescott, and I was privileged to know Alice Mackenzie Swaim and her husband, wonderful husband, Bill. And I thought I'd tell you, first of all, how we met, which was at a barge concert in the Susquehanna River. And I was invited to a party afterwards, and Bill Swaim was there. And so we got to talking. I told him I was an English teacher at Cedar Cliff and some of the colleges around here. And so he said, you should meet my wife. She is a poet. So I said, wonderful. So we met at their Presbyterian apartments, which he certainly helped to found and brought it about. They lived on the top floor of that apartment building. And so we arranged a time when I could meet with Alice and talk with her. And I think I felt for the first time in my life that I was in the presence of a poetic genius. She was just marvelous, and showed me many of her writings, and I'm not sure that anybody has an actual account of her poems, but it's in the thousands. So I treasured the friendship with her very much. She even helped my students at Cedar Cliff who were interested in becoming poets, and corresponded with them actually. actually. She was very, very generous like that to share her wonderful talent. And Bill loved being with my kids at Cedar Cliff. And so I would go and pick him up, and I don't think he was able to drive for some reason, and take him to Cedar Cliff, and he was absolutely wow, my student. He was a minister, as you all know, and he said to my kids as soon as he walked in the door, he said, you can call me Tex, or you can call me Cowboy. And by the way, he was wearing a 10-gallon hat and boots, because he loved Texas. But he said, you can't call me Mr. Swaim. So that set it off so much in his favor that the students didn't even want to go to lunch that day. They just wanted to stay there and listen to Bill and the stories about Alice. So Alice was exceptional. She was a poet laureate, Scottish American, and in my book it's far too much to go through at this point, but you'll see that I only listed a number of the wonderful awards she gained all over the world. She was internationally renowned, and so I just can't say how amazed and awed I was at knowing her. And yet she was so quiet that she was just a joy. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady to know, and so generous, as I said, with her talents. So we met quite a few times after that, and we carried on a correspondence. And as I said, she wrote so many poems that it's just very hard for anyone to choose one that depicts everything. But I did find this, well, I reminded myself of this one called When First We Met. When first we met, there was no way to tell that we would walk together down the years, blinded sometimes by laughter or by tears, but still enchanted by a strange, wild spell. What was the sorcery by which we fell so deeply into love that all our years grew faint as morning mist that disappears before the first chime of the matin bell? What whim of destiny led us to meet across an ocean and a continent, from Scotland, that is, to the United States, once more to make the old story true, that in each other we should be complete, and by some strange and happy accident would find a love no discord could subdue. We found a love no discord could subdue, and learned through all the changing years and days the fury of that elemental blaze, the white heat of the scattered sparks that flew when you were lost in me and I in you. And still I have not found the perfect phrase for love, with all her weird and wanton ways, beyond the power of mortals to construe. No other heart could ever know or feel the rapture that your touch awakes in me. Too vast in one brief lifetime to explore, and whether it will someday kill or heal. This ultimate of love's intensity is far too overwhelming to ignore. Now, I knew them for several years. I guess they were in their 70s when I knew them. And I probably don't have much more time here. That was a long poem, but I do want to share with you that I continued to visit Bill after Alice's death. In my book, the only way I could figure out how to presented so that it would not be boring or difficult was to divide it into categories or subjects. So on a page which shows the wedding, the Swaim wedding in 1932, by the way, the photo was by Bacharach, who you probably know is one of the very top photographers in Philadelphia. I entitled this little snippet on love. The love between Alice and William Swaim was deep and lasting. As Alice's life neared its end, William wrote a letter to her dated February 7th, 1996, just 8 days before her death. Her own health failing as well, in which he outlined a plan which would have allowed them to spend the rest of their lives together at the Presbyterian home in Newville, where he served as one of the 3 CEOs. I understand that he had prepared one for him and one for her. Well, he was already living there. He was ill too at that point. And so in that February 7th letter, he said, "Darling Alice, oh, how I miss you. Wherever you are is home, sweet home to me," hoping that they could be near to each other on Alice's release from the hospital in Carlisle. But on February 15th, 1996, at age 84, Alice died in the Forest Park Health Center, Carlisle, just before William's plan for their togetherness and her future care could be realized. My understanding is that the surgical center is now named for Bill Swaim. He wrote on April 25th, 1996, 1 month after her death, imagine my surprise to find 77 warm-hearted love poems, which she had hidden among my history papers, and added, "What a happy world this sphere would be if everybody said, 'I love you' at least once a year." Innumerable persons are sitting at their edges of their chairs, longing to hear the 3 big words, "I love you." And that's what I observed, quiet as Alice was and vociferous as Bill was. They were just so opposite, and so much opposite in their behavior, that it was just a pure joy to sit and listen to them. So I understand that Kathleen might be there or listening, and there is terrible noise on my side here of the telephone. Don't know why, but I apologize for that. I'm not sure it's coming from my end here, but anyway, I could go on and on and on for hours talking about the poems that I loved so much. I have my favorite ones, and I've just tried to give you a little taste of how I knew her and Bill, and admired them both. They were both strictly intellectuals and just really amazing and awesome to talk with. So the article that I wrote in the Patriot News, Sunday Patriot News, in July of what would it have been, I guess, around 5 years. I think it was July 5th. And it shows this picture that I introduced my talk with you, and talked about her pieces about Pennsylvania, which are pure imagery of our state. So please read when you find it, the one on part of Pennsylvania, and you will find many, many other references to the beauty of this state and how much she loved it. She wrote a great deal about her beginnings and his. She was from wealth and intellect, and he was from poverty and intellect also, because his father was a minister. But they met, Bill and Alice met, just another one little more snippet. They met when he was a student. Bill was a student at her father's seminary, Pittsburgh Western Theological Seminary. He was a student there, and that's how they met, he and Alice. And because he had no money, he used to ask her to take walks with him. And they would walk usually past the ice cream store. So for 5 cents, he could at least buy her an ice cream cone. But he really didn't have the money to take her anywhere that cost money. But he certainly won her heart, and that's what his personality was made of. He was just fun and smart, and also a writer, and of course held these executive jobs with religious organizations. So, but he won her heart, and of course by the time I got to know them, they were probably in their 70s, and I just thank God that I had the opportunity to know them. So sometime when I get around to lecturing again, I can tell many, many stories that are fun to hear about. And one of them is how they related to my students. And I just think I wish I had met Kathleen and Elizabeth so that I could have talked with them too. And I hope that Kathleen is here. But sometime I would love to meet you, Kathleen. So take good care, everyone. And if you ever have any questions or have an interest in my research other than what's in my book, which is called A Poet for the Ages, just give me a call or write to me, and I will answer. My goal in writing this book was not to make money. My goal was to sell books to get her poetry out there to the world, as much more of the world as she needed to get to. So I just loved knowing both of them, and I appreciate this opportunity, Jim, to talk about this subject. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Joan, for sharing the things that you shared and the stories and the poems. And I'm pleased to announce that I am a shameless promoter of Joan's newest effort. I've been really encouraged her to fulfill that wish to write a second book of Alice Swaim's poems. And I think that the theme will be love stories.
Love poems.
Love poems. So I know I'm looking forward to that, and I'll keep reminding you, Joan, that you need to keep working on that.
Well, I need somebody to just keep pushing me on this.
Well, I'm good at that.
And it's a joy for me to write. I love to write poems myself. I'm glad to be with the poetry group that Mark is representing me too. So thank you for this opportunity, Jim.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And so let's go back here to the story map and see where it went. Oh. My.
What a beautiful story. It was really beautiful.
Fantastic. Hey, this is Pam. I just want to say I met.
There we go. Okay, so moving on. And Dustin, this is really kind of shooting the open mic piece, but I don't know what else to tell you. But moving
It's all right,
forward
Jim. We had
here,
some technical
Alice
difficulties.
also shared some advice for aspiring poets that I think is relevant for today. And so let me share what that advice was. I have several articles of advice to aspiring writers, but briefly, I would suggest they read as widely as possible in all varieties of poetry, books, and magazines, and study and practice the techniques of poetry writing thoroughly, not merely write chopped up prose under the guise of free verse. The true poet is inspired, but needs to be at home in the media just as great musicians are. Of anything in this paragraph, that line really strikes as the most important thing that I'm reading here today with the advice. I think the current literacy scene forgets to emphasize the beauty, music, and deep feeling of real poetry at the same time that it glorifies ugliness, bad language, and clever gimmicks that are not necessarily poetic. A truly memorable poem, though stark at times, is free from affected and artificial phrasing as much as from triteness. And so obviously Alice Swaim's poetry form of choice was foreign poetry. Obviously we have folks that are on this call that land in free verse. But what unites both forms, in my opinion, and I'm not a poet, but still in my mind unites things, is that the true poet is inspired but needs to be at home in the media of choice, is what I get out of that. So Dustin, what would your reaction be to what I just shared there?
I think you nailed it there. It's
Are
really
you
about.
asking me?
No, this is Dustin, and I'm not hearing Dustin.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Hear you now, Dustin.
Okay. So I think you nailed it on the head there. I think it's really about the choice of media that inspires you to express yourself and find meaning in your writing, whether it's poetry, prose, free verse, hip hop, whatever inspires you to grow your inner self and find that inner peace. Most poets write for cathartic reasons, myself included, and obviously Alice Swaim as well. So I think that no matter what medium you write in, it's just important to keep writing and find that inspiration wherever you can.
Thank you, Dustin. Here's a picture of Alice. And this last poem that I would like to share really has an interesting story. This was found at the Historical Society of Dauphin County, and it was in a Cumberland County Historical Society journal, the Cumberland County History in 1987. And the background of this, and I'm not sure when it was written, but the background of this poem is that Bill Swaim's passion, one of Bill Swaim's many passions, and he was passionate about just about everything. From what I talked with Kathleen today in an earlier interview, one of his passions was history, and when he started a project, he was all in, and so he was very much into research. And this poem, this background for this is that at one point, Alice accompanied him to the Cumberland County Historical Society and was just observing him doing his thing, totally immersed in the research. And this poem came from that, and I'd like to share that with you. It's called "The Historian." Your head inside the diving bell of 18th century paths and log cabins dives fathoms into memories far more real than this book-lined room, these desks and tables. Even when I wave my arms before your face and shout, they do not penetrate the sea of time. You take notes with a modern ballpoint pen on perforated computer paper, draw graphs and diagrams absorbed by Blunston licenses, details of deeds and land grants, only the bubbles rising to the surface. The moving oxygen lines still tell me you are tethered, albeit tentatively, to the air-breathing mundane world of now. And so, as Joan mentioned, Bill and Alice Swaim were very different, but very much alike in that they were passionate about their hobbies and the arts and history. And I think this poem really does a nice job of illustrating that passion. And so at Mount Holly Springs Heart and Soul, we really strive to find out what matters most, not only to the residents who live in the community, but also to people who work, learn, or play in Mount Holly Springs. Finding out what matters most means giving everybody a voice and listening to their stories. One of our values, which is part of the Mount Holly Springs Heart and Soul Strategic Plan, is recognizing that uncovering and facing the past goes hand in hand with uncovering the future. Through Alice Swaim's poetry, the reader quickly discovers what mattered most to Alice Swaim, writing poetry, her family, her church, and her community. Today's Alice Swaim poetry readers can be inspired to find out what matters most to them. And here's a copy of our logo that was designed by a local artist, giving Holly Coick a shout out. If you haven't noticed the heart in the Heart and Soul logo, I'm pointing that out to you. And then lastly, we found some papers in the Historical Society of Dauphin County that outlined Alice's accomplishments and the poems that she wrote. But the last paragraph of this document really speaks to her interests. I want to share it's hard to read, but I'll share what's written there. It says, among her other interests are family, a collection of foreign costume dolls, gardening, handiwork, Girl Scouts, although in talking to Kathleen, we're not sure about that, cats, and church work. Interests listed below that what mattered most to Alice Swaim are things that matter most to many who live today: family, church, hobbies, passions, poetry for Alice Swaim, and community work. And so here are the credits for this story map. And that brings us to the end of the featured part of tonight's event, albeit through a very significant interruption, which is striking. And I'm hoping that everybody is processing well on that. And I'll check back on that later. So Dustin, I'm going to turn things over to you. I'm not sure where you want to go with this, but that's the end of our part.
Well, thank you, Jim, for doing this. And Kathleen, it's a real honor to have you here with us while we honor Alice. Just real quick before we get started on the open mic, because of the albeit disruption we had, we're going to limit the open mic, I believe, to one poem or 3 minutes, whichever comes first. And then Pam, you wanted to say something. I know we were trying to get moving here, so I just want to give you that opportunity there. You're muted, dear.
And can we get this back onto the just sharing
Yep, I can.
the people? Very good, thanks. Okay.
Hey, Pam, you're muted. If you could unmute.
Yeah, it's really nothing. I just wanted to say that really resonated what Joan said. And I had the pleasure of meeting William Swaim 2 weeks before he passed. The whole time I owned the house, I really didn't know that they were still in the area, because I really didn't do the history until much later. But I visited him at the Swaim nursing home, or I guess, that's where he was. And that's exactly what he said to me. Just call me Tex, just like what Joan said. And that was right 2 weeks before he died. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So just limit your open mic pieces to 3 minutes. If you have 2 short poems, that's fine. If you have a longer poem and you think it might be close, we'll just do the one. So I'm just going to be the icebreaker, I guess. It's a pleasure to meet all of you, those who I have not met before. So here we go. Also, I guess I would let you know that every 4th Wednesday of the month, we do host the Amelia Given Library and myself are working in partnership for Given Poetry Open Mic. There's always a feature. This month's feature, which is next Wednesday, is Carol Clark Williams. I know that some of you may know her. She is the poet emeritus of York, and it has been active in the poetry scene for many, many, many years. And she is like my grandmother, and I love her very much. And she's also a fantastic poet. So I encourage you to join us for that. So I'm going to read this one. Wrote this one a little while back. It really has to do with just kind of aging, since the poet of the ages, right? So it's called Creases. I've aged, learned so much in this brief life, and honestly, lucky to even be writing this poem or whatever it is. So many lights in this dark matter, stars somewhere in my universe. Some are distant now. Others wake up with me every day. I've even created one. I work at the gates of life and death, arranging the layout of bodies. There is something familiar and strange about dying. I've aged. Like weathered pages of a heavily read book, some so worn they are no longer legible, others are better read backwards. I've aged. I've watched heroin kill families with one life, and I have to bury the boys. The stars are sick, plight-stricken, no way out. It's a death trap, no light, just the spikes and the crack and the shelters wrought with hunger. One great foundation, children in the mortar, we slumber. A land built on laws has become a lawless land. I am softer in the breakage, always aware of time, always trying to make it back to my stars, to hold them just a second longer in case this star doesn't rise tomorrow. I've aged, and my face shows it. Road mapped in atlas, when lost, I find a mirror trying to locate the road home. It is a fragile thing, life.
Me? Oh, Lord.
You are fragile and bright. Smile and love what you have. Hold your stars close and your head high. You are alive to live the greatest unfathomable circumstance, the unanswered question and insurmountable odds in the great vastness of immeasurable void. Yet here you are, blanketed in your struggle, entangled in the power of your mind, beautiful and alive. So, thanks. Who would like to, is there any other open micers that would like to share some of their work? I know I'm not the only one.
I won't share my work, but I will. I was prepared if Mark and Joan hadn't been able to join, I was prepared to read a Alice poem, and there were two of them that I liked, and they're totally different in that one of them I think is kind of humorous. So I thought I'd read that one, and then the other ones I liked because it's really, really short. So I'll start with that one.
Thanks for getting my back, Jen. I appreciate that.
Well, yeah. Well, it's been a weird night.
That it has.
Okay, I'll do the short one first. And Kathleen, I keep looking at you, wondering if hopefully you'll be able to share your thoughts about some of if you know anything about these poems. So this first short one that I really liked is called "The Women Know." Before the fire and Holocaust, the women weep. They toss and turn through endless nights while others sleep. Before the sounds of battle rise, before the young men go, they hear the endless agonies. The women know. That's it, and that's all for we women everywhere. Yeah. And then the other one is, I found a little humorous. It's at the end. It's called The Gossip. Demure and sweet, for all the world she looks like someone's mother, filled with love and peace, yet not a move her keen eye overlooks, but files away each gesture, each caprice. She scatters hints like feathers in the wind. Words are her weapons, none of us escapes. She spreads sly rumors, how some saint has sinned, what daytime dramas her mean fancy shapes. She seems to operate by some sixth sense. I'm sure she never sleeps. but in our midst keeps passing judgment, peeling off pretense, forever present like a catalyst. Now she's departed, our small towns at peace. God granted us a merciful release. I just thought that one was, it sounded like, I wonder if like Kathleen, I wonder if you knew who that gossip might have been or anything like that. I just thought that was kind of amusing at the end. It was like, thank God she's departed. But anyway, those are my two.
All right. Is there anybody else? Mark, you want to read?
A number of years ago, I wrote a poem about my mother's childhood experience with the brevity of time. The same theme that I found in Poet for the Ages when I was trying to select poems. It's a poem I wish she might have been able to hear as a young girl, because it would have immediately said, somebody else understands what I was going through here. It's called Putting a Stop to It.
Is it his poem?
She thought it was worth a try, stopping time in its tracks. Too much was at stake. Already she was 5, and it was 1923. She knew it was the way of things to change. How lunchtime suddenly was dinner time and daytime turned to dark while you weren't looking. In her cozy bedroom with its gentle plays of light and shadow through the second-story window, nothing mattered more than having everything stay the same. She thought she could do it. She would sit there on her bed, and every moment she would think of time and nothing else. If she didn't waver, time, much like a rabbit freezing under scrutiny, would never get away from her again. She held firm for all that afternoon, until her friends, those plays of light and shadow from the window, first imperceptibly, then quite convincingly began to steal across the carpet. She could read the message in the shifting patterns that they made. She would live for many years, but from her findings on that daring, sedentary afternoon, she knew, however long it took, one day everything would end. Even so, the objections that she filed that day against the unjust truths of time, she never would renounce. She didn't put a stop to time, but with that courage first to try, and always later to dissent, one can imagine she probably came close.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right. So is there anybody else that would like to share? Well, I am going to say that then this open mic. So here, I would also just, number one, I'd like to thank you, Jim and Jen, for putting this together. I know it has been weeks in the planning, and we've had quite a few meetings to get this to run smoothly. We did have a hiccup, but you know what? We're resilient, and we still were able to come back together fairly quickly. Most events don't come back, like that. So we did, I think, all right by that. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. Jim, you did a fantastic job on the presentation, so I'd like to give you a shout out as well. And Jen, I know you were a part of that as well. And all the historical research that you did was impressive. So just want to give you guys a big pat on the back and say thanks, because I know that was extremely time consuming for you guys.
I'd like to add something too, just for, everybody here, except, well, maybe with the exception of Mark and Kathleen, I think probably was told, but this was really to replace, this is our short-term fix for what we want to have as an in-person event, hopefully at the Amelia Given Library later. So
They want you to go.
hopefully once this pandemic's over and we can all gather together, there'll be a real nice event that we can get together again, kind of focusing on the poetry.
And coffee and cookies.
And, we were talking wine and stuff too.
Hey,
This was gonna be
we
an
can throw that in
This
there
was going to
too.
be an evening event. So anyway, so I think this obviously was, unfortunately, the hacking messed stuff up, but this is just the beginning. And hopefully in person, there'll be a lot, it'll be a lot nicer.
We don't have to worry about hackers in person. We get to
Well,
just
the old days with
throw 'em out.
streakers. I guess the old days with streakers, we could have, go back to the old days.
Well, and I'd just like to thank Mark and Joan for joining us tonight and sharing the poetry that they shared, as well as all the folks that joined. A very unfortunate event and very traumatic event of what happened here. So I'm concerned that kind of traumatic for folks, and we'll be checking in just to make sure everything's okay as we move forward. That's a first. We've read about that happening, but never experienced it. So now we know what it feels like, and it's not a very good feeling. But thank you all for bouncing back and being persistent and patient with us as we pivoted as fast as we could to a different way. And we do have a recording of this second attempt, which we will make available to those who are participating. And also we'll be putting on the Mount Holly Springs Heart and Soul Facebook page as well. So thanks, Dustin, for the special edition of Open Mic, and looking forward to next week and subsequent months. So you've got some new fans. We do enjoy tuning in and listening to what you have to offer, and really appreciate that as well.
Thank you. And Jim, once everyone logs off here, if you can hang back, because this is the first recording I did.
Okay.
I don't want to mess it up and lose this. So
Okay.
if you could just kind of hang back and walk
can
with
do
me
that.
through this, so I would be, after what happened, I'd be even more upset if I lost what we did record. So I don't want to do that. So if you can
Okay,
hang
will
back
do.
and walk me through that. So thank you, everybody. And
Thanks, Dustin.
Thank
No.
you.
I hope
Thank
you will be mindful, and I know you will in your editing, but as I recall, I had just, as the disruption occurred immediately thereafter, promised you a brief commercial for the Pennsylvania Poetry Society. Of course, that was not it.
I think you can check it.
It was seamless to me from my promise of that brief commercial and what happened next.
It was good.
Thank you.
Mark, I didn't assume it was your commercial. I promise that. And
You're a gentleman. Thank you.
I was telling Jim, I've been on a few other Zoom open mics and whatnot where, you'll get some kids that come in and they'll just shout or whatever, but I have never seen that. But we were reactive and we pulled it off regardless. We're not going to let them win. So
Kudos to you. Kudos to you all.
kudos to everybody. Thank you all for joining.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye, thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, Jim.
Joan. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, Jim.
Bye, Kathleen.
Bye.
Okay, so what happens when you stop the meeting, it automatically comes on, it says it's going to convert. It's going to convert the recording to a file. And then it should go.
Is that by pressing stop or end?
As soon as you end the recording or stop recording, it does it. When you end the recording, it starts to convert, and it'll come on. It'll does that automatically.
Okay, I'm going to do stop recording instead of end. So if I
It
have
doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't start converting until the meeting ends.
Oh,
So when you
okay.
end the meeting, the recording stops automatically.
Okay.
And so what you might want to do is check to make sure that in your files, there should be a Zoom file in your documents folder. So if you look in your documents folder, see if you see a Zoom file, because that's where it will go to.
Let me see. Documents. Oh, yep, I got it. Okay, that's
So
where it's gonna go.
Yep, it automatically goes there, and then it'll tell you when it's done. And then what I do to be able to share it is I use Google Drive. You have a Google Drive?
I do have a Google Drive.
And what you can do there is you can upload the file from that Zoom folder into the Google Drive,
Okay.
and then that allows you to create a shareable link. And then that's what goes into Facebook, and that's what goes to send it out to others, because the file's way too big to send any other way.
Right. So what I'll do then is I'll send you via email the Google Drive, right?
Right, and it takes a while to get to that point. It's going to take a while to convert, and then it takes a while to settle itself before you can upload it.
Okay. So what I'll probably do is let it convert and save tonight, and then tomorrow morning, once I get into the office and everything, I'll
You can
upload it to the Google Drive if that's all right. Are you okay, Jim?
I am. I feel badly that Kathleen had to hear that, because that's devastating for someone. I mean, I'm sure it was an emotional night anyway, to go down memory lane about her mom, and then to have that ruined with this. I'm going to check in on her.
People suck, man. I can't believe someone would, like, what do you get out of doing that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, back in the day, we used to make crank calls like, hey, is your refrigerator running? And then hang up, Unbelievable.
And so what I will do when I get the link is I'm going to, unless you know how to do that, if you can turn the Google link into a YouTube video, and I don't know how to do that. Maybe you
My
do.
wife does. I don't. My wife is like an influencer, so she knows how to do that stuff. So I may give her some homework tomorrow. Right. I'll talk to her about it after I jump off here. And then I would also take a look and see did you get the first half of that? Because we could like butt them together, because that was like most of the feature presentation.
Right. I think that you can edit in YouTube. You cannot edit any other way but YouTube, and I don't know how to do that either. So, but I know someone who does. So if we can
my wife does too. So
yeah, I'll see if I did get anything from the first half that I could do the same thing you're going to do, and if I can, I'll send the link your way. And then if your wife can edit and butt up the two segments, then we might have something that's from the beginning and the end. But to be quite honest,
she makes her own videos all the time, so she should be able to.
To be quite honest with you, the pivot resulted in some really robust, extended conversation about poetry, and Alice, particularly from Mark and from Joan.
Joan's story was awesome, man. Like that was. And I could see Kathleen was like filling up a little bit, like just from hearing the backstory there. So everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
So
well, if we can't butt up the two, I'm not getting any heartburn for that, because I think the second half is pretty powerful in and of itself as a standalone.
Okay. Well, let me know if you need any help editing or anything. I can send it over to my wife, and she could probably butt them together.
I'll try. If it did convert and I have it in that file, I'll upload it to my Google Drive and send the link your way, so that you can work on that link and the link from your computer and do her magic.
All right, sounds good.
Very good. All right. Well, you have a good night.
You too, Jim.
Thanks, Dustin.
Yep, you bet. See ya.
Bye now.